The Rising Storm. As Captain Marcus Stark stood on the bridge of the EES Odyssey, the weight of his decision pressed heavily on his shoulders. The klaxons blared, and the hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the air. He gazed out at the stars, now marred by the shadow of the Kago warship looming nearby. The atmosphere was tense. The crew was on edge, but Stark felt a steady resolve rising within him. The Kago vessel had been disabled, its once proud exterior now a shell of twisted metal and sparking circuits. They had to act fast. The Kago would not take defeat lightly. Stark turned to Commander J. Nix, who was at her station, her face illuminated by the flickering lights of the control panel. "Prepare a team to board the Kago ship," he ordered. "We need intel. I want to know everything about their capabilities and their plans." "Yes, Captain," Nix replied, her tone sharp and focused. She turned to the Marines, who were loading weapons and checking their gear. "You heard the captain. Move out." As the team of soldiers assembled, Stark's mind raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Kago were just the beginning. If they were indeed watching humanity, then their next move could be catastrophic. A few moments later, Stark found himself in the hangar bay, surrounded by the familiar clank of armor and the soft thud of boots on metal. The Marines were ready, and he felt a surge of pride for his crew. They were outnumbered, but they had something more potent than numbers: determination. "Listen up," Stark said, addressing the Marines. "This is not just about gathering intel. It's about sending a message. Humanity will not be pushed around. We stand united, and we fight back." Cheers erupted from the soldiers, their spirits ignited by Stark's words. He led the way into the boarding shuttle, and as the doors sealed shut, he took a deep breath, mentally preparing for what lay ahead. The shuttle jolted as it detached from the Odyssey, and the view of the alien warship grew larger on the screen. Stark's heart raced. This was no longer just a mission. It was a declaration of humanity's resolve. As they approached the Kago ship, the exterior was a mess of damaged plating and flickering lights. The Marines readied their weapons, and Stark felt the weight of responsibility settle upon him. If they failed, it could mean the end for countless lives, including those back on Earth. The shuttle landed with a hard thud, and the doors opened to reveal a dimly lit hangar filled with wreckage. Stark stepped out first, scanning the area for threats. The air was thick with tension, and the faint smell of burning metal lingered. "Form a perimeter," he ordered. The Marines spread out, weapons drawn, eyes scanning for movement. Stark led the way deeper into the ship, each step echoing in the vast emptiness. As they moved through the dark corridors, the walls were adorned with alien symbols and designs, a stark reminder of how little they understood of their enemies. They came across a control room filled with Kago technicians, their eyes wide with fear at the sight of the humans. "Hands up, don't move," Stark shouted, pointing his weapon at them. The technicians hesitated, glancing at each other, unsure of what to do. "Captain, what do we do?" one of the Marines asked, keeping his weapon aimed. Stark took a moment, considering the situation. "We need information. Secure them, but don't harm them unless absolutely necessary." The Marines quickly moved in, cuffing the Kago technicians and securing the area. Stark approached one of the captured aliens, a tall figure with mottled green skin and red eyes filled with dread. "Where is your command center?" Stark demanded, his voice steady. "We want answers." The technician trembled, looking around at his captors. "This way, I will show you," he said, his voice shaking. Stark exchanged glances with Nix, who nodded in agreement. They needed to get to the command center to understand the full scope of the Kago threat. They followed the technician through winding corridors, moving cautiously. Eventually, they arrived at the command center, a large room filled with screens displaying various parts of the ship and strategic maps of the surrounding space. Stark's heart raced. This was where they would find the information they needed. "Start downloading everything you can from those systems," Stark instructed one of the Marines, who moved quickly to connect his device to the Kago systems. The technician, still trembling, pointed at a screen. "Here, you can see our fleet movements and planned attacks," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Stark studied the information flooding the screen. It confirmed his worst fears. The Kego were planning a massive assault, not just on the Xerians, but on other races as well, including humanity. "This isn't just a war," Stark said, his voice low. "It's genocide." Nyx looked up, her expression grim. "We have to warn Earth. We can't let this happen." Just then, the room shook violently as an alarm blared throughout the ship. Stark cursed under his breath. The Kego must have realized their ship was compromised. "Fall back. We need to get out of here," Stark shouted, motioning for the Marines to regroup. They raced through the corridors, adrenaline pumping as the ship rocked again from external blasts. They made their way back to the hangar bay, but the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. A squad of Kego soldiers appeared, their weapons raised and eyes filled with fury. "Get to cover," Stark yelled, firing his weapon. The first shots rang out and chaos erupted. Marines took their positions, returning fire as Stark ducked behind a console, his heart pounding. The Kego soldiers advanced, their tactical formations tightening. Stark could see their determination. They wouldn't back down easily. He glanced at his team, knowing that they had to hold their ground. "Focus on the leaders. Take them out," Stark commanded. The Marines coordinated their fire, and Stark felt a surge of hope as they began to push back against the Kego forces. Just when it seemed they might gain the upper hand, a blinding flash lit up the room. Stark shielded his eyes, and when he looked up, he saw Nyx standing bravely in the open, firing at a Kego commander. "Get down," Stark shouted, but it was too late. A plasma shot hit Nyx, and she fell to the ground, her weapon clattering away. Stark's heart sank, and a wave of fury washed over him. "Cover me," he yelled to the nearest Marine, who immediately shifted fire to provide cover. Stark sprinted toward Nyx, ignoring the chaos around him. He reached her side, kneeling to assess her wounds. "Nyx, stay with me," Stark urged, but he could see the pain in her eyes. She managed a weak smile, her determination unbroken. "I'm not done yet, Captain," she gasped. "Just keep fighting." Stark clenched his jaw, feeling a mixture of anger and despair. He wasn't going to lose her, not now. He picked her up, throwing her arm over his shoulder for support. "Let's move," he shouted, guiding her back toward the shuttle. The fight raged on behind them, and Stark could feel the tension rising. They had to get out of here. As they neared the hangar bay, the Marine team provided covering fire, pushing back the Kego soldiers. Stark's heart raced, each step heavy with urgency. He could see the shuttle in the distance, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. "Almost there," he yelled, adrenaline coursing through him. The Marines fell back to the shuttle as Stark hoisted Nyx up, carrying her towards safety. Finally, they reached the shuttle, and Stark quickly set Nyx down on a bench inside. He turned to the pilot, urgency etched across his face. "Get us out of here now." The shuttle engines roared to life, and they shot out of the hangar, escaping the chaos of the Kego ship. As they entered space, Stark looked back at the burning vessel, a symbol of their hard-fought victory. But the victory was bittersweet. Nyx was injured, and they had no idea what awaited them on Earth. Stark felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders as they sped away from the Kego warship, knowing that this was just the beginning of a fight that would test humanity's resolve like never before. He turned to the crew, determination blazing in his eyes. "We will fight, for Nyx, for Earth. We will not back down." As they traveled through the stars, Stark knew one thing for certain: humanity had been underestimated, and they were about to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The battle for survival. The chaos of battle enveloped the Odyssey. Stark's heart raced as he watched the screen display the Kego ships maneuvering with terrifying precision. The relentless assault on the Xerians was far more brutal than he had anticipated. The glowing arcs of plasma fire lit up the darkness, a stark reminder of the stakes they faced. "Captain, the fighters are engaging," Commander Nix shouted, her voice rising above the clamor. They formed a defensive perimeter around the Zerians. "Good, let's give them support," Stark replied, adrenaline fueling his resolve. "Fire the rail cannons on the nearest cargo vessel. Target their weapon systems." The ship shuddered as the powerful cannons unleashed their firepower. Stark watched as the cargo ship flared under the assault, the energy shields flickering. But even as they struck, the cargo responded, returning fire with ruthless efficiency. "Direct hit," the tactical officer shouted, clutching his console as the ship rocked again. "Shields down to 25%. We can't take much more of this." Stark clenched his jaw, refusing to let fear seep into his thoughts. "We can't give up now. Divert power from non-essential systems to the forward shields." Nix was already issuing orders to the crew, her voice a steady beacon in the storm. The crew responded with the determination that Stark had come to expect from them. They were fighting for their lives, for their home, and they would not back down. As the fighters engaged, Stark's thoughts drifted to the Zerians. They had entrusted their fate to humanity, and he couldn't let them down. He needed to push the advantage while they still had one. "Commander, can we establish a communication line with their command ship?" Stark asked, urgency in his voice. "Attempting now," Nix replied, fingers flying over her console. "We're getting interference from the cargo ships, but I think I have a channel." "Put them through," Stark commanded, hoping they could coordinate an attack. A moment later, the face of a Zerian officer appeared on the screen, their features drawn tight with stress. "Human captain, we need assistance. The cargo are overwhelming us." "We're on it," Stark said, his tone firm. "Concentrate your fire on the cargo ships targeting you. We'll flank from the left." "Understood. We will create a diversion," the Zerian officer replied, determination flaring in their eyes. As the communication ended, Stark felt a flicker of hope. Together, they could turn the tide. "Nix, tell our fighters to provide cover for the Zerians. We need to take out those cargo vessels before they can regroup." With renewed vigor, Stark watched as the fighters soared into action, weaving through enemy fire with agility. The Zerians, bolstered by their support, began launching counterattacks, their beams of energy slicing through the darkness. Suddenly, the Odyssey shook violently as another cargo ship unleashed a torrent of plasma fire. Stark struggled to maintain his footing, gripping the edge of his command chair. "Status report. Shields at 15% and dropping." The tactical officer yelled. "We're taking damage to multiple decks. We can't let them breach the hull." Stark's mind raced as he considered their options. They were outgunned and outmatched, but they had something the cargo didn't: the spirit of humanity. "Redirect all power to the forward shields and weapons," Stark commanded, his voice unwavering. "Nix, prepare to execute a ramming maneuver. We're going to hit them hard." "Are you sure, Captain? That puts us at severe risk," Nix cautioned, but Stark saw the determination in her eyes. "We'll be a beacon of resistance," he replied. "We can't afford to be timid. If we go down fighting." As they adjusted course, Stark felt the weight of every crew member's hope resting on his shoulders. The Zerians continued to press their attack, but Stark knew it would only be a matter of time before the cargo overwhelmed them. "Incoming fire," the tactical officer warned. Stark braced himself as the ship rocked once more, alarms blaring around them. The Odyssey charged forward, the cargo vessel looming large in front of them. Stark's heart raced as they closed the distance. "Now," he shouted, and the crew unleashed a barrage of firepower, striking the cargo ship with everything they had. The ship's hull groaned under the impact, the force sending shockwaves through the Odyssey. Stark gritted his teeth, holding onto the command chair for dear life. The cargo ship began to falter, its shields collapsing under the relentless assault. Direct hit on their weapon systems. The tactical officer shouted, exhilaration breaking through the tension. They're losing power. Stark could hardly believe it. They were making progress, but it was still too close. Prepare to ram them. All hands brace for impact. As they hurtled toward the Kago ship, Stark felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. They were committed to this fight. Impact in 5 seconds. Nyx warned, her voice steady even as the ship trembled. Hold on, Stark shouted, his heart pounding as they collided with the Kago vessel. The impact reverberated through the Odyssey, sending them both spinning. For a moment, everything was chaos. Alarms blared and the lights flickered, but as the dust settled, Stark glanced at the view screen. The Kago ship was crippled, listing to one side, its crew scrambling to regain control. Boarding parties, prepare to deploy, Stark ordered, adrenaline fueling his determination. We need to secure the ship and gather intel. As they prepared to board, Stark turned to Nyx. We did it. Was still standing. For now, she replied, her expression fierce. But this is just the beginning. With their resolve steeled, Stark and his crew geared up for the next phase of the battle. They would face the Kago head-on, ready to show the galaxy that humanity would not be cowed by fear. The fight for survival had only just begun, and they were ready to rise to the challenge. As they boarded the Kago ship, the smell of scorched metal filled the air. Stark led the charge, flanked by Nyx and a squad of Marines, their weapons drawn and ready. They had faced danger before, but this felt different. This was about survival, not just for themselves, but for the Xerians and humanity as a whole. Stay sharp, everyone, Stark warned as they moved through the corridors, the dim lights casting eerie shadows. We don't know what we're up against. The crew moved in tight formation, weapons at the ready, as they advanced deeper into the alien vessel. Stark could hear distant shouts and the sounds of struggle echoing through the metal hallways. They were not alone. Suddenly, a group of Kago soldiers appeared, their green skin glistening under the flickering lights. Their eyes glowed with malice as they raised their weapons. Stark's instincts kicked in. Fire, he shouted, and the corridor erupted into chaos. Blaster bolts flew, illuminating the dark space as both sides exchanged fire. The crew fought with a fierce determination, driven by the knowledge that their lives depended on it. Stark ducked behind cover, firing back at the Kago soldiers. His heart raced as he realized they were outnumbered, but he refused to let fear take hold. He glanced at Nyx, who was expertly maneuvering, taking out Kago soldiers with precision. Push forward, he yelled, urging his team onward. They fought fiercely, but the Kago were relentless, their ferocity matching humanity's own. As they battled through the ship, Stark felt a sense of urgency. They needed to reach the command center and disable the Kago's capabilities before reinforcements arrived. Time was against them. Keep moving, he shouted, rallying his team. The walls trembled around them, the Kago's defensive systems fighting back. But Stark could feel it. This was humanity's moment. They would not falter. Finally, they reached the command center. Stark kicked the door open, and they charged inside, ready for a final showdown. The room was filled with Kago officers, their eyes widening in shock. Stark shouted, "This is for Earth," as he fired, the battle reaching its climax. The fight was fierce, but they had the element of surprise. The Kago officers scrambled to defend themselves, but Stark and his team pressed forward, determination burning in their hearts. They would fight for their survival, for their world, and for every future they might secure against the dark tide of the Kago Empire. As the last Kago officer fell, Stark stood amidst the chaos, panting heavily. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The fight for humanity's future had only just begun, and Stark was ready to lead them into whatever challenges lay ahead. Unity in diversity. With the command center secured, Stark took a moment to catch his breath. The adrenaline coursed through him, but there was no time to rest. The reality of their situation loomed large. The Kago were regrouping, and they had to make the most of their hard-won victory. Nix, set up a secure channel to the Odyssey, Stark ordered, glancing at the control panels scattered throughout the room. We need to inform the crew of our status and coordinate the next steps. On it, Captain, she replied, her fingers dancing across the console. Stark watched as she worked, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly as the connection was established. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the familiar face of Commander Hart from the Odyssey. He looked relieved yet focused. Stark, we are worried. What's your status? We've secured the Kago Command Center, Stark reported, his voice steady. But we need to disable their systems before they can regroup. We're working on it now. Hart nodded, his expression grave. Be careful. We can hold our own, but the Kago forces are still a threat. Keep your guard up. We will, Stark assured him. And we'll need support. Once we disable their weapons, we'll push to reclaim the Xerians. As the connection ended, Stark turned to Nix. Let's start disabling their weapon systems and communication. We need to give our forces an advantage. The team worked diligently, navigating the alien technology with a mix of curiosity and urgency. Stark was surprised at how quickly they adapted, proving that humans could learn and innovate even in unfamiliar environments. As they made progress, Stark's mind wandered to the Xerians. He had learned so much about their culture, their desire for peace, and their fear of the Kago. They had chosen to ally with humanity in a moment of desperation. It was up to him to honor that trust. Captain, one of the engineers called out, snapping him back to the present. I think I found the core of their weapons system. If we can plant an explosive here, it should disable their entire network. Good work, Stark said, his heart racing with the prospect of turning the tide. Let's do it, but we need to make sure we don't trigger any alarms. With a sense of purpose, they carefully prepared the explosive device, Stark issuing quiet orders to keep everyone focused. As they worked, the tension in the room hung heavy. They were intruders in a hostile environment, and any slip could cost them everything. Explosive set, Nix reported, her voice low. What's the plan for extraction? We'll head back the way we came, Stark decided. Once the device is activated, we'll have just a few moments before the Kago realize what's happening. We need to move quickly. With a final glance at the control panel, Stark felt a surge of confidence. This was their chance. They moved stealthily back through the corridors, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Just as they reached the main corridor, the alarms blared to life, filling the air with an urgent wail. Stark's heart sank. They know we're here. Move. The team sprinted through the ship, Kago soldiers converging on their position. Stark could hear the sounds of battle behind them, the chaos unfolding like a storm. Cover fire, Stark shouted as they reached the exit. Blaster bolts whizzed past, and Stark felt the heat of battle close in around them. They fought back, firing at the advancing Kago, their resolve unwavering. Keep moving. Nix yelled, and they plunged forward, adrenaline fueling their escape. They burst out of the ship, the open space a welcome relief. The Odyssey hovered nearby, and Stark signaled for the shuttle to approach. The Kago were in hot pursuit, their fierce growls echoing in the air. Get to the shuttle, Stark urged his team. We need to leave now. As they boarded, Stark could see the Kago soldiers closing in. Just as they took off, a blaster bolt struck the shuttle's wing, causing it to lurch dangerously. Status report, Stark shouted, gripping the control panel as the shuttle stabilized. We're good for now, but they're right behind us. The pilot responded, eyes wide with urgency. Engage evasive maneuvers, Stark ordered, watching as the Kago ships filled the view screen. The pilot expertly maneuvered the shuttle, dodging incoming fire while the crew returned fire. Stark's heart raced as he focused on the task at hand. As they escaped the Kago's grasp, Stark allowed himself a moment of relief. They had done it. They had secured the command center and disabled the Kago's weapon systems. Status of the Xerians, Stark asked as they docked with the Odyssey. They're holding strong but facing heavy resistance, Nyx reported. Our support will make a significant difference. Stark nodded, his resolve hardening. Let's regroup and strategize. This isn't just about winning a battle, it's about securing our future together. Once aboard the Odyssey, Stark convened an emergency meeting with his senior officers and the Xerian delegation. The room buzzed with tension as they shared updates and formulated a plan. We've successfully disabled the Kago command ship, but we need to take decisive action now, Stark began, addressing the group. If we don't act quickly, the Kago will regroup and retaliate with greater force. The Xerian officer, a tall figure with striking blue skin, nodded solemnly. We will fight beside you. Together, we stand a chance against the Kago Empire. Stark felt a sense of unity among the diverse group. Humans and Xerians were no longer strangers, but allies fighting for a shared cause. We have the advantage of surprise. If we can strike at their remaining forces while they're disoriented, we might be able to drive them back. A strategist from the Xerian delegation stepped forward. We know their tactics. We can exploit their weaknesses in coordination. If we flank them from both sides, we can cause chaos in their ranks. Stark looked around the room, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Let's coordinate our forces and prepare for an all-out assault. We'll hit them where it hurts. As they finalized their strategy, Stark's mind turned to the bigger picture. This battle was just one step in a much larger struggle. They were standing against an empire that sought to dominate the galaxy, and they needed to be ready for whatever came next. Together, we will show the Kago that humanity and Xerians will not back down, Stark declared, the words resonating through the room. We will fight for our homes, our people, and our future. With their plan in place, Stark felt a renewed sense of hope. The tide was turning, and they were ready to face the Kago head-on. The battle for survival had ignited a spark of unity, and together they would forge a path toward victory. As they prepared for the upcoming confrontation, Stark reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. They were no longer just a disparate group of beings. They were a coalition, a force to be reckoned with, and he would do everything in his power to lead them to triumph. With determination in their hearts and unity in their ranks, they set their sights on the next phase of their battle. The galaxy was watching, and together they would show that resistance was not just possible, it was inevitable. The final assault. The fleet gathered in formation, an impressive sight of human and Xerian ships ready to strike. Stark stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, his heart pounding with anticipation. They had a solid plan, but the danger was still palpable. All systems ready, Captain, Nyx reported, her eyes focused on the monitors. Stark nodded, looking at the holographic display of the Kago forces. We'll move in from both flanks. Xerians, you'll lead the charge on the left. We'll provide cover fire from the right. Keep communication open and be ready to adapt. The Xerians nodded, their expressions resolute. We will fight as one, their leader promised. With a final deep breath, Stark activated the comms. This is Captain Stark. Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for all who stand against tyranny. Let's show the Kago what we're made of. The fleet surged forward, engines roaring. As they approached the Kago's position, Stark's hands gripped the control panel tightly. The first wave of fire exchanged echoed through the cockpit, blaster bolts lighting up the dark space. Engage evasive maneuvers, Stark shouted as enemy fire rained down. The Odyssey twisted and turned, dodging blasts while returning fire. Xerian ships flanked the Kago, their tactics catching the enemy off guard. The Kago struggled to regroup, confusion spreading among their ranks. Stark could see the tide beginning to turn in their favor. Push forward, take out their command ship, Stark commanded, feeling the adrenaline surge. With a united effort, the coalition pushed deeper into the fray. The battle raged on, a testament to their combined strength and determination. As the command ship fell under heavy fire, Stark felt a rush of triumph. They were winning, and for the first time, hope shimmered on the horizon. This was not just a battle. It was a declaration of unity, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of those who dared to fight back.